Now that we're into the hottest months of the year, I'm reaching for clothes that are breathable, easy to style, and built to last. But I've stopped wasting money on fast fashion that barely survives the season. And that's why I'm so glad I found Quince. Quince makes it easy to upgrade your summer wardrobe with timeless staples that feel luxurious without the luxury markup. I've been living in their 100% European linen shorts and flowy dresses starting at just $30. And I picked up a pair of their Italian leather platform sandals that look and feel just like designer brands, but at a fraction of the price. Quince creates timeless, high-quality pieces, and they cut out the middleman, which means less waste and more value. Their clothes aren't just trendy, they're enduring, and they work only with ethical factories that prioritize both people and the planet. It just makes sense. Fewer, better things. Pieces I'll wear for years. I use Quince, and I know you'll love it too. Give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/bestofyou for free shipping and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Alison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of The Best of You. I am so looking forward to this time together today. Today's episode was birthed out of a need in my own life. And as I thought about some of the things I've been struggling with and working on, it occurred to me that so many of you are likely dealing with the same inner dynamics as I am, and that some of what I've been learning in my own life might be helpful to you. Today's episode is especially for the caretakers, and specifically, I'm talking about emotional caretaking, where we work to meet the emotional needs of everyone around us. These are the parts of us that operate silently without us even realizing it at times. You might be the steady one in your family, the person everyone turns to, the one who holds it all together behind the scenes. You are the one who shows up. You give. You carry the emotional weight quietly, persistently, because that's what you've always done. And yet maybe somewhere along the way, you lost touch with yourself. This episode is for all of you who care deeply for others, but sometimes forget to care for your own soul. It's for the part of you that will not stop trying to fix what cannot be fixed, at least not by you all alone. The part of you that's tired of holding it all together. If you relate to any of this, I want to offer you a gentle invitation today, not to walk away from the people you love and care about, but instead to come home to yourself and to remember that tending to your own inner world isn't selfish. It's essential. It's where true love and true compassion for others begins. In today's episode, I'm going to share a little bit of my own story, how emotional caretaking has shaped me from early on, and how I'm learning to return to that grounded place within. We'll explore what it means to find your voice again and how to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. And at the end, I'll guide you through a short spiritual reflection, a prayer you can return to anytime you feel overwhelmed or lost in the needs of others. I have a repeated pattern that shows up in my life to this day. I've worked on it a lot, but it shows up with different iterations. And basically, it's like this. I'll find myself compulsively checking in on other people. It might be on my family members, on friends. I'll catch myself literally scrolling through text messages to see who might need something, mentally tracking past conversations, maybe even conversations from months ago, wondering if anyone is upset or needs support. Just the other day, I was doing this again. mentally circling around other people's emotional states and perceived needs, even though literally my own body was shaky. I hadn't eaten that day. I'd had a number of things happen in my own life that were really stressful and really hard, and I couldn't figure out how to manage them. I was clearly in need of a break, in need of rest. And yet, during that inner chaos, a part of me was mentally scanning for anyone out there in the universe, literally anyone I might know who might need something from me. Maybe I could do this nice thing for this person. Maybe I should check on this person. Why haven't I followed up on that person, right? I was going through my mental Rolodex of all the people I could check in on, of all the people I could do something nice for. And that can be a really helpful quality at times. But in this moment, I just became so aware of the disparity. My own body was literally shaking because I hadn't eaten yet that day, because I was so overwhelmed with some of these stressful situations, both in my personal life and at work, that had come to my attention. And I just began to realize this is weird. Why is my default to scan all the ways I could care for others while I was so clearly the one in need of care? And I just had to stop and notice what was happening. It's such an old and familiar impulse. If I can just make sure everyone around me is okay, then maybe I can finally rest. But it never works, because the reality is trying to survive my own needs through losing myself in other people's problems keeps me on a hamster wheel. This part of me keeps running and running and running, trying to fix what cannot be fixed in the world around me, trying to carry what was never mine to carry. And it's a never-ending loop of exhaustion. And it's tricky to navigate, because here's the thing: you can always find someone in need of care. And sometimes we even hear people say, listen, if you're struggling, do something nice for others. And that's a valuable principle, and I get that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. For those of us with extreme caretaking impulses who tend to manage the pain of others instead of our own needs, it can be very challenging to know how to step off that hamster wheel of compulsive caretaking and finally attune to our own needs, to our own inner cry for care. This is what I mean by the ache of the caretaker. There's something sacred about showing up for others. We know this to be true, but when we lose touch with our own center, even our care becomes distorted. We stop listening inward. We override our own needs, and we begin to try to fix what was never ours to fix. If you've ever found yourself waking up with jaw tension, a dull headache, or tightness around your face, you're not alone. For so many of us, especially in seasons of anxiety or inner stress, that tension finds a way to surface. That's where Remy comes in. Remy makes custom-fit night guards that help protect your teeth from the effects of grinding, something that can often be triggered by underlying stress or anxious thoughts we carry throughout the day. Here's how it works. They send you a professional impression kit right to your door. You follow their clear step-by-step instructions, send it back, and Remy creates your night guard in their US-based lab. It's custom fit to your mouth, far more comfortable than anything over the counter, and 80% less than what you'd pay at the dentist. And they make it risk-free with a 45-night perfect fit guarantee. So if you've been holding tension in your body, maybe without even realizing it, this is a simple, empowering way to care for yourself. Go to shopremy.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou at checkout to get up to 50% off. That's shopremi.com/bestofyou. Use code bestofyou for 50% off. Thank you, Remy, for sponsoring this episode of The Best of You. So where does this compulsive, overactive caretaking impulse come from? It can come from what psychologists call parentification. This is when, as a child, maybe you're asked to step into an adult responsibility before you're developmentally ready. This can happen emotionally, logistically, or both. It can happen if you had a parent who struggled with their emotions, who maybe confided in you or leaned on you, or even became emotionally unpredictable. And at a very young age, you learn to kick it into high gear to become the steady one. Or maybe you became the emotional buffer in your family. You sensed conflict between your parents, or maybe between a parent and a sibling, or between other siblings. And maybe nobody said it out loud, but your nervous system picked up on it. And without realizing it, you became that buffer for everybody, that peacemaker, the mood stabilizer. You learned to kind of stay small, to shapeshift, to stay agreeable, to stay attuned, to keep the system from falling apart. Maybe you were the secret keeper, the one everybody confided in, or even just the one who kind of held all of the emotional tensions in your own body. Sometimes it was even more direct. Maybe you literally had to care for an adult who was physically ill or emotionally unwell, unable to work, or maybe just chronically unavailable. Maybe you had to cook the meals. You had to help with siblings. You learned how to read the needs of others before you could read a book. I'm not laying any blame here. This happens, even in the most well-intentioned of families. But regardless, a part of you learned to take on the role of an adult far too young. And lastly, sometimes these caretaking parts are formed in a more subtle way through a slow layering of our God-given temperament and personality, and even gifting, our emotional sensitivity, our empathy, combined with the family dynamics and the cultural dynamics around us. Some of us were simply born with very tender, intuitive nervous systems. You might have always been the kind of child who felt things deeply, who could walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional temperature. And that kind of empathy is really beautiful, but when it's left unsupported or misunderstood, if no one ever taught you the boundaries of that and how to differentiate and step back from all of that empathic knowing, especially when you're taking in data that isn't actually yours to process, it can turn into a sense of over responsibility. And I mention this because I still remember even now the names and faces of kids in my elementary school classrooms from as early as second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, who I knew intuitively were struggling, who I knew maybe weren't being cared for at home, who maybe the other kids were mean to. There was a part of me that took in all of that data, that just kind of intuitively understood human pain and human suffering way earlier than I knew what to do with it, right? And so even apart from our family dynamics, sometimes we just have that temperament. And if we didn't have anybody kind of come alongside of us and help us understand, hey, I love your sensitive heart. I love that you see the pain in others. And I want to help you learn to honor that, as I also want to help you learn how to let it go when it's not yours to fix, when it's not yours to heal, when it's not yours to mend. That's a pretty nuanced skill, even for those of us as adults. So if you had that kind of temperament as a kid, no wonder it's hard for you to learn how to turn that off. And so regardless of whether this part of you developed in your family of origin or whether it developed as part of your God-given design, and probably in most cases it's a combination of both, this caretaking part of you is highly attuned to the emotional states of other people. It might be to your own kids, it might be to your own spouse, to other family members, to friends, to people in your community, to strangers in the grocery store, right? The list can go on and on. But this part of you tracks everyone else, often without you even realizing it. It notices who's upset, who's withdrawing, who's even hinting at a need. And it doesn't just notice it, it jumps in, sometimes with support, sometimes with solutions, sometimes by simply silencing your own voice or your own needs, because you do not want to impinge on the needs of someone else. Often this part of you jumps in before you have a chance to pause and ask yourself, am I the one called to step in here? Do I have the capacity to meet this need? Is this my responsibility, or is some part of me acting out impulsively and compulsively to meet needs that are not mine, in fact, to meet? Typically, this part of you, this internal caretaker, gets extreme because it started to form beliefs about what makes you valuable in relationships. These parts of us tend to believe things like this: my value lies in being needed. My peace depends on everyone else being okay. If I stop showing up for others, I'll lose my place in the system, in the family, in the friend group, in the community. This is how I stay connected. This is how I stay loved, to abandon myself and show up constantly for the needs of others. And so this part of us keeps working. She stays ahead of everybody else's needs. She fuses connection with responsibility. And before you know it, caretaking becomes a way of life, a default, the only way you know how to show up in your relationships. Maybe you recognize some of these indicators of a caretaking part in yourself. Maybe you're the one who always remembers all the milestones, the holidays, the events, the anniversaries, regardless if anyone else remembers yours. Maybe you're the one who always sends the check-in texts, who's always sending the encouraging word. Maybe you're the one who senses tension before anyone even speaks a word. Or maybe you're the one always one step ahead, emotionally, logistically, relationally, always on guard, making sure everything's working. But all the while, you're the one running on empty. You're the one in need of care. Because here's the hard part. Other people rarely notice the toll that all this caretaking takes on you because you're really good at hiding it. That's part of the survival. You've built your identity around being the one who can hold it all. And so other people don't notice when you need care. But inside, there's often a younger part of you just aching for someone to notice her, to care for her, to tell her it's okay to stop, to rest, to receive care. When I actually connect to this part of me who's so busy taking care of everybody else, and I kind of find that place in my soul that's doing that, she doesn't show up to me as that competent, capable adult that I feel like when I'm blended with her. She actually surfaces as more of a neglected orphan. She sort of has scraggly hair and she seems malnourished and she seems emotionally unkempt and kind of confused and like, what would it even be like for someone to pay attention to me? And as I've gotten to know this sort of inner neglected part of me, I realize so much more clearly that she doesn't even know what it feels like to receive love or care. How would she know how to ask for it from someone else when she doesn't even know what she needs? She only really knows how to give it. So it's sort of a foreign idea to her. And the first step is really just learning that about this part of myself, that this is going to be a process. It's not as simple as just taking a day off or as going to a spa or some of these superficial ways that we talk about self-care in our culture. This is a deeply embedded part of the soul who has to learn what it's like to trust that there's an adult present who wants to give care to her. It's a process of rebuilding trust. Because here's the deeper truth. This part of you doesn't have a full understanding yet of true belonging. She doesn't yet know that you are loved, not because of what you do for others, but because of who you are. Because you are made in the image of a loving God who longs to come alongside you with emotional attunement, with rest, with reassurances, with all of that love and devotion and encouragement and wisdom that you are so good at pouring out for others. The caretaking part of you does indeed have a beautiful gift to offer. She's sensitive, she's empathetic, she's emotionally attuned. But first and foremost, what this part of you has to learn is that she also is worthy of love. Giving care to others when it's rooted in a sense of your own inner belovedness is a beautiful thing. It's a gift. When you are grounded in the truth that you are already loved, your care flows from a place of abundance. You become a wellspring of compassion, not because you're trying to earn love or connectedness or belonging, but because you know love. You become a healer because you've been healed, a lover of other souls because you've experienced love in your own soul. But on the other hand, when your care for others is rooted in survival, it gets distorted. You may still show up with kindness, but underneath there's fear. Fear that if you stop caring, you'll lose connection. Fear that if you name your needs, you'll be seen as too much. Fear that if you bring your full voice, you'll blow the whole thing up, that you'll lose all that stability that you've worked so hard to hold together. And this is where something sacred, your gift of compassion, becomes compulsive. You get back on that hamster wheel. You start to overfunction in relationships, driven by fear more than you're driven by love. You give more than is sustainable. You say yes when your body is saying no. You anticipate others' needs before they even name them, and you begin to disappear in the process. Instead of mutuality, the relationship becomes lopsided. You might unintentionally begin to enable other people who aren't taking responsibility for themselves. You may enable dysfunctional relationships around you because you can't bear to let the other people around you fight it out amongst themselves. You may find yourself attracting other people who are emotionally unavailable or draining because you've trained them that you will carry the emotional weight. And in that process, an incredibly vital thing gets lost: your God-given voice. The voice inside of you that carries much needed truth and wisdom and power. Even if the truth in this moment is, I can't do this right now. I'm the one in need. And I need to be able to speak up for myself without fear of losing everyone around me. When caretaking becomes compulsive, it stops being holy and it starts becoming harmful. Harmful to you, harmful to the other person who isn't doing the work that God has given them to do, and harmful to the possibility of true, mutually beneficial connection. Because real love includes boundaries, real love includes mutuality, real love always also includes you, your voice, even your needs. It's unsustainable and exhausting when you consistently override your own needs. And it becomes disorienting when your voice is always tangled up in someone else's expectations. Over time, you begin to lose your sense of what you think, what you want, what you feel, what you need. Your nervous system gets trained to read everyone else's emotional landscape while your own inner soul remains unexplored and untended. And even as other people might be praising you for being so thoughtful or so dependable or so helpful, you can feel the toll in your body, in your relationships, in your sense of self. You were made to love and care for others, yes, but you were never made to lose yourself in the process. If any of this resonates with you, I want you to take a deep breath with me as you're listening. Maybe place your hand over your heart as you take that deep breath and send some love to that hard-working, caretaking part of you. We are not here to lay blame or to shame. We are here to get curious about her and to let her know she is no longer alone. She is not broken. She's just tired. And for just a few more minutes today, we're going to take a moment and finally pay attention to her. If it's safe to do so, if you're not driving in a car, maybe even close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in and a long, steady breath out. Let your body soften. Let your mind settle. Let your spirit open for just a few moments. And I'm going to ask you some questions for you to consider. Again, if your hands are free, you can take notes or journal while you're listening, or just mentally join with me and reflect as I walk you through some of these questions. What part of you is tired today? See if you can notice her, not as a thought, but as a sensation in your body. Maybe she's in your chest, your shoulders, your stomach. Maybe she's hunched over from carrying too much. Or maybe she's frozen, curled up in the corner, unsure how to ask for help. Can you simply acknowledge her presence? This part of you who works so hard. Just be with her. Let her know she's not alone. If it feels like it's helpful, you might try to picture this younger part of you, the one who learned to care for others before herself. What does she look like? Can you see this younger version of yourself who always stayed quiet to keep the peace, who cared for others to feel safe, who believed her worth came from being needed? And as you notice this part of you in your body, in your mind's eye, just see if you can sit with this part of yourself in the quiet and let this part of you know you've done so well. You've helped so many, and you don't have to keep going alone. And if you're able to tap into this part of you that lives in your body, check in to see what would help her rest and feel loved just a little bit today. What would she want to do with even just 5 minutes to herself? What music would she like to listen to? What words of kindness would she like to hear from you or from God? See if you can listen for her voice, something she'd love to receive in this moment from you or from God. Even now, let her hear you say, you're not just here to help everybody else. You are worthy of care, of love. Take some deep breaths in and out. And just notice what that feels like to connect with the part of you who really only ever knew how to pour out. And notice what it might be like to commit to this part of you to spend just a few minutes each day checking in on what she might need from you or from God. If that was helpful to you, you can save this episode and go back and play it again. You can replay that section each morning until you have a better sense of what it feels like to tap into that part of you who also needs care. You are already an amazing caretaker of others. What might it be like to take all of that caretaking and turn even just a portion of it back toward yourself? For many of us, learning how to tune in to our own needs is a process, tending to that part of you who learned to care for others before she ever learned how to receive. This is sacred ground. This is how you build this inner sanctuary where love can truly grow, where your voice is also heard, where your needs are also brought to the surface, and where God wants to meet you, not so that you can do more for others, but because God longs to lavish love on this part of you. Jesus said, love others as yourself. God never asked us to disappear in our love for others. You will become a much better lover of others as you take consistent time each day to also love this part of you. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.